Hey guys, welcome to the last topic in chapter 13. In this topic, we are going to talk about applied a specific immunity, and this is in the form of vaccination. This is how we go about artificially generating active immunity in people and animals. So why is this topic important? This topic is really important because vaccine technology is crucial to preventing millions of deaths each year, and so we really need to understand how this technology works and why it is so important. Here's our topic objectives for this chapter. Make sure you understand these, and if you have any questions about any of these, let me know. The vaccines can be a little technical, so I fully understand if you have a hard time understanding the different mechanisms of vaccination. So let's start off with types of immunity. You've seen the different immune systems or the different types of immunity we have within the body, but let's talk about the different types of acquired immunity someone can have. There are two groups, natural immunity and artificial immunity. Natural immunity can come in two forms, active and passive. Active is when you get a cold and you recover from it, and now you have an active immunity against that specific cold virus. Passive immunity is like breastfeeding, where children are past antibiotics, so it protects them, but their immune system is not actively making that immunity, and it's very time sensitive. Usually passive immunity does not last for very long, and so it allows for protection for a small period of time. There's the same type of these in artificial immunity. Active being where we get the immune system to actively make antibodies or be on the lookout for antigens to a specific pathogen, and this is through vaccination. And passive is where we'll go ahead and do immunotherapy. We will do basically the same thing as breastfeeding, except for through an IV, where we will give antibodies to a patient through an IV fluid. And this once again protects people against a disease for a short period of time, but it is better than nothing. So principles of vaccine preparation. This is just like antibiotics. In fact, a lot of these are going to be almost identical to the antibiotics that we talked about in Chapter 9. So the goals of the vaccine are to stimulate the immune system, and so that the body will be able to respond immediately if that pathogen were to emerge within the body. Qualities of effective vaccine are very similar to antibiotics. We want them to be safe and non-toxic. We want them to work. And most importantly, we want them to be cheap and easy to administer. These are the main aspects of these effective vaccines. So make sure you understand those, because inexpensive and long shelf life, easy to administer are all keys in making sure that we can deliver these vaccines to populations around the world. So what types of vaccines do we have? We have two main groups. We have whole cell vaccines, where we deliver the entire pathogen to the body, and we have subunit vaccines. We're going to talk about each of these. Within the whole cell vaccines, the whole cell vaccines are kind of the more common vaccine, but I think that you're going to be starting to see a lot more subunit vaccines come on the market in the future. There are two main types of whole cell vaccines. There's killed viruses. This is where we take a virus, killed vaccines. They can be virus or bacterial. We take the pathogen, we kill the pathogen, put it in a vaccine, shoot it in your arm. The body detects it, the immune system raises a response, and it goes on generating that active immunity. The second type is live attenuated vaccines. This is where we take the pathogen and we essentially break it. We stop it from being able to form the disease within the body, but it will still replicate within the body, creating an actually stronger immune response than with the killed. Now, the problem being that even though it could be a stronger one, there's a lot of other variables that go into the live attenuated viruses. One of the big disadvantages, there's always a concern that these viruses or bacteria will revert and regain that pathogenicity that we took away from it. And so there's a little bit of a safety thing, and so that's where these live attenuated vaccines versus the killed vaccines come into play. They're both equally good, and they have their own advantages and disadvantages, and they're both used in a lot of the vaccines that we've all received. Subunit vaccines are relatively new vaccines. These are vaccines where we take specific parts of the pathogen, so cell receptors, proteins, DNA, and we purify that out and put that into a vaccine, and then give that to somebody to help develop the immunity. Subunit vaccines require there's two reasons why subunit vaccines aren't used as much right now. The first is that they're a lot harder to develop because you have to determine exactly which item is going to cause the most antigenicity and is going to be the best target for a vaccine. The second being that because they're purified, they're a lot more expensive to produce. And so that's where the trade-off is in subunit vaccines. A new type of subunit vaccine that gets talked about a lot about is DNA vaccines. And in this, we essentially do what we talk about with E. coli and insulin, but we do it with our own cells. We take a part of the DNA of the pathogen, insert it into our cells, and allow that to create the antigen that will then stimulate our immune system. So there's no risk of an infection or anything like that, and it's all within your cells. Now, DNA vaccines are still really in their infancy. They're really being developed. They've had a lot of success in fish vaccines with these. So I expect that we'll see these a lot in the future, but we're still working on them. These have a really big opportunity for us in diseases where we definitely don't want to inject the pathogen in any form into the human body or into animals. For example, HIV. We would never want to do a killed or attenuated HIV virus. So a DNA vaccine is a good option, but it still hasn't been worked out for HIV, obviously, otherwise we would know about it. So future of vaccines, it's not like we have all the vaccines we need. There's tons of vaccines that we still need to develop because this is our best line of defense, is to prevent infection in the first place. And some of these we've talked about: HIV, AIDS, malaria, respiratory diseases. These affect 200 million people yearly, and so we really need to develop these. Beyond these functional vaccines we need to develop, we also need to work on ones that cause latent or persistent viral infections. These are the herpes viruses or cytomegaloviruses. Because our bodies can't clear them, we can't ever mount an efficient immune response. And so that's where that's another project that we need to be working on. So if vaccines are something that's interesting to you, I would encourage you to explore this, because there is a bright future in vaccine development ahead of you if you're interested in that kind of field. So how do we administer vaccines? Well, there are three main ways that we give the shot vaccine, the typical vaccine that you're used to seeing. These are subcutaneous, intradermal, and intramuscular. Subcu and intradermal are both different layers of the skin, and intramuscular goes straight into the muscle. There's also some newer types of vaccines, such as nasal and oral vaccines. They're uncommon, but they are available. Some people get the missed flu vaccine sometimes. What's awesome about the nasal and the oral vaccines that the other ones don't provide is they stimulate your IgA, which gives you mucosal protection, which gives you basically a new front line of defense against those kind of against that pathogen that vaccine is for. So if you can develop mucosal immunity, this is a gold mine for protection. These vaccines almost always include adjuvants. What happens is that we have these pathogens, and either because we killed them, we inactivated them, or because they're such small particles, we need to inject some chemicals along with them to get your immune system to come over and check it out. Otherwise, the immune system might just ignore it, and that's what these do. They help stimulate their immune system. One of the most common adjuvants are alum, but there's a bunch of different ones. If you've ever heard of people using thimerosal and stuff like that, those are stabilizers, but there's a variety of other things that go into vaccines besides just purified pathogen. So just be aware of that, but the adjuvant is what helps stimulate that immune system response. So we've always heard about side effects of vaccines, and I'm sure when you've gotten a shot, you've had a side effect of some sort. Like when I get my tetanus shots, my arm always hurts for days. And there are some side effects, but they're generally mild side effects, and they're definitely worth the protection that's provided to you by the vaccine. The main types of side effects are local reactions, fever, allergies, and there's a variety, but those are the main ones. Allergies, especially if you're getting like the flu shot and you're allergic to eggs and the flu virus has grown up in eggs, that's a concern. A big thing we always hear about with side effects is autism. Vaccines have been there is no link between vaccines and autism. And if you have any questions about this, I've posted some extra material for you in Blackboard, because this topic's not really the time or place to get into the argument and talking about the facts and figures of these links. But I do want you to be aware of that. We have disproven any link between vaccines and autism. So make sure you understand that the two are not related at all. So to sum up this topic, let's talk about the price of not vaccinating. The problem with vaccines is that they are so effective, we have forgotten why we needed them in the first place. Before we had the measles vaccine, there were 4 million cases of measles a year, and almost 400 children died annually. Could you imagine living in a world like that and not vaccinating against measles if that was available to you? So that's what the problem is we see that people talk about having that they don't give the measles shot because what's the risk of measles? Well, people die from measles, and that's been something forgotten about. Same thing goes for polio. We're starting to see these diseases come back into our population because of the herd immunities being lost. So what's herd immunity exactly? Herd immunity is where it's a theory that if you vaccinate a certain percentage of a population, you'll end up protecting the entire population. And this is something that's used a lot in animal farming. They only vaccinate a certain percentage of the animals. And what this does for us is it protects the young children, so children that aren't old enough to be vaccinated. It protects the immunocompromised, and it protects the elderly. All these people generally can't get vaccines. So it's really important that we have this herd immunity to help protect them against that, against these diseases. And time again, every time there's been a study, the Center for Disease Control and other health organizations have always come out saying that regardless of the risk, the benefit to all of us far outweighs the risk of vaccination. So vaccination is a really interesting topic, and I know we did it real quick here. I didn't want to focus on too much because I could go on and on and on, because vaccines are one of my passions in scientific research. So if you'd like to talk about this more, just let me know. I've posted a lot of resources for you in Blackboard as well. So just let me know if you have any questions, and make sure you review those objectives. Thanks.